The moment they hinted at leaving, I felt my whole future slip through my fingers. It was a short call, only a few minutes, but the silence that followed lasted far longer. I set the phone down on my desk slowly, as though it were fragile glass that might shatter. The words still echoed. We're exploring other options, maybe bigger firms. A polite hint, but I heard the warning underneath. The kind of warning that doesn't leave room for peace. The chair across my desk sat empty, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like an absence too loud to ignore. I stared at it until my vision blurred, imagining the client sitting there one last time, shaking hands before walking out for good. The office was quiet, except for the faint hum of the computer screen and the rhythm of the clock on the wall. Each tick sounded sharper than usual, cutting into the silence. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. Panic had a texture that day. Dry mouth, racing pulse, skin prickling under the desk lamp. My thoughts spiraled too quickly to hold. If they leave, what happens to payroll? What happens to rent? What happens to me? One client, one relationship, and yet it felt like the foundation of everything I had built was suddenly fragile, like it could crumble with a single choice that wasn't even mine to make. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, unable to move. The ceiling tiles blurred into patterns that meant nothing. The thought pressed heavy. Maybe my whole business is just a house of cards. The silence didn't soothe me. It accused me. It told me that maybe I'd been a fool to rely so heavily on one client, one anchor, one fragile tie to stability. The fear wasn't just financial. It was personal. In my culture, losing face isn't just about money. It's about identity. To lose a client isn't simply to lose income. It's to lose credibility, to lose standing, to carry shame that stretches far beyond the office walls. The empty chair across from me was no longer just furniture. It was a symbol of collapse. And in that moment, panic wrapped around me tight. My future, everything I had worked for, felt as though it could vanish in the silence of a single empty seat. Sometimes I wonder if I built a business or just a house of cards. That thought has lingered more times than I care to admit. The truth is, small firms like mine live on delicate balances. A handful of key clients can carry you for months, even years. And when one of them hints at leaving, the weight of that dependence becomes unbearable. It feels like standing on a thin wire, every gust of wind threatening to throw you off. The dependence runs deep. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's payroll tied to one relationship, stability tied to one handshake, credibility tied to one renewal. And because I know it, the fear doesn't need to shout. It only whispers, and I still hear it loud. The root of it isn't only business. It's cultural too. In my upbringing, reputation and reliability weren't just values. They were survival. To fail publicly was to lose face, to carry shame not just as an individual, but as part of a family. That pressure still hums under every decision I make, every deal I close. And so when a client hints at leaving, it doesn't feel like business. It feels like exposure. It feels like the face I've worked so hard to present, steady, capable, trustworthy, is about to crack. The mirror questions haunt me at night, lying awake while the clock ticks toward dawn. Do you ever feel like your business rests on one fragile relationship? Yes, too often. And when that thought takes hold, every client meeting feels like a performance, a desperate attempt to keep the cards standing. Do you fear one loss could undo everything? Yes. Sometimes the fear feels so real that I can already see it happening. The doors closing, the sign taken down, my team dispersing. The empty chair across from me keeps showing up in my mind. It's more than furniture now. It's a symbol. It embodies every fragile dependence, every unspoken fear, an absence that screams louder than presence. And yet, through the panic, another voice whispers a different wisdom. A voice I resist, but one I know is true. No one client defines your worth. Adaptability does. Still, in moments like this, that wisdom feels far away. What feels close, immediate, pressing, is the dread. The sense that one loss could bring everything crashing down. The question lingers unresolved, heavy and sharp. What if my whole future really does rest on one fragile chair? The clock ticked louder in the silence than it should have. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling as if it could offer answers. The room felt hollow, emptied of air. My chest tightened with each breath, shallow and uneven. The client's words replayed, looping endlessly. We're exploring other options, maybe bigger firms. The thought drilled itself deeper. If they leave, we're finished. If they leave, everything collapses. I could see it vividly. The invoices piling unpaid, my staff scattered, the office lights shut off for good. It wasn't just imagination. It felt like a memory from a future that hadn't happened yet. My eyes drifted back to the chair across the desk. Empty, but so loud in its emptiness. Every time I looked at it, I saw the client sitting there for the last time, shaking hands, thanking me politely before walking out. The chair had become an accusation. You built your whole future on me, and I'm leaving. I gripped the armrests tightly, as if holding on to the chair could keep the business from slipping through my fingers. My shoulders slumped, pulled downward by the invisible weight. The clock ticked. Tick, tick. Each sound matched the loop in my head. If they leave, we're finished. If they leave, we're finished. If they leave, we're finished. The collapse didn't come with shouting or tears. It came in silence, in the way my gaze fixed on the ceiling, unfocused, in the way my breath grew shallow, in the way my spirit sagged under the fear of failure. I considered it, giving up altogether, closing the doors before they closed on me, walking away before I had to watch everything crumble. It was a quiet surrender, but it was real. For those moments, I wasn't leading, I wasn't planning. I was frozen, staring at a ceiling that offered no answers, wondering if this was the end. But then, something shifted. Not in the market, not in the client's mind, but in mine. My eyes fell to the side of the desk, where a stack of folders sat untouched. Files from smaller clients, families, individuals, first-time buyers, names that didn't carry the same weight in revenue, but carried lives just as real. I reached out and picked one up almost without thinking. The folder was light in my hand, but it carried a story. Inside was the paperwork of a young teacher I had helped months earlier. She hadn't been a big client, She hadn't brought in impressive numbers, but she had cried when she got the keys to her first apartment. That file reminded me, every folder in the stack represented someone whose future I had touched, someone whose stability wasn't theoretical, it was real, and I had helped build it. And then it struck me. My business wasn't built on one chair. It wasn't balanced in one relationship. It was woven from many. The empty chair across the desk wasn't the only symbol in the room. The stack of folders was too, and it told a different story. I heard myself whisper, I built this to serve many, not rely on one. The words steadied me, enough to lift my head, enough to release the armrest, enough to feel air return to my lungs. The wisdom grew clearer. Resilience means no single client defines me. My worth isn't tied to who leaves. It's proven by who stays, by who I serve, by how I adapt. I placed the folder back on the stack and let my hand rest there, grounding myself in its weight. The panic didn't vanish, but it loosened. The dread didn't dissolve, but it shrank. The mantra began to rise, quiet at first, then steadier. I can adapt. I can rebuild. I can thrive. Each phrase felt truer, fuller, louder. I glanced once more at the empty chair. This time, it didn't accuse me. It was still empty, yes, but I no longer saw collapse in it. I saw space. Space for someone new to sit there. Space for another life to walk in. Another folder to be added to the stack. The transformation wasn't dramatic, but it was real. I shifted from frozen collapse to anchored resilience. I said it out loud now, steady and clear. My business isn't fragile. It's adaptive. The clock still ticked. The silence still hung. The client still hadn't decided. But inside, the verdict had already changed. I wasn't collapsing. I was standing. My business isn't fragile. It's adaptive. That became the anchor I needed. But anchors aren't just words. They need weight. They need proof. And proof, I've learned, is built through practice. So I gave myself one. At the end of that long day, when the silence still lingered from the call, I pulled out 3 folders from the stack on my desk. Each one held the story of a client I had served in the past month. The first was a young couple buying their first home after years of renting. I remembered their nervous smiles, the way they clutched each other's hands as they signed the papers. The second was a retiree refinancing to ease the burden of debt. I remembered his deep sigh of relief when the numbers finally worked out. The third was a single parent securing stability for her kids. I remembered her tears when she realized she could give them a home. One by one, I placed the folders in front of me, touching each one as though to feel the reality of the lives inside. And I whispered the affirmation, I serve more than one. I wrote their names on a notepad, not for business records, but as proof for myself. Proof that my worth wasn't tied to one empty chair. Proof that resilience was already alive in the breadth of people I had helped. Each name carried weight. Each story carried grounding. By the time I finished, the panic that had pressed so hard on my chest earlier had eased into something steadier. The stack of client folders became more than paperwork. It became a grounding symbol. Whenever fear threatened to shrink my world down to one client, I returned to that stack. I let my fingers brush over the covers, reminding myself, my future is built on many, not one. And in those moments, I felt the shift take root. The fear didn't vanish, but it no longer defined me. The practice did. Even in that small ritual, even in that single affirmation, I felt the weight shifting. My worth isn't defined by who leaves. It's proven by who I continue to serve. That truth became the closing arc of the week. At work, it changed how I carried myself in conversations. When clients hinted at uncertainty, I no longer heard it as a death sentence. I heard it as part of the rhythm of business. Some will stay, some will leave. And my job isn't to cling desperately. It's to adapt faithfully. With my team, it steadied the culture. They could sense when I was panicking, when I carried dread into the room. Now, when I leaned on resilience, they mirrored it. They saw me grounded, not frantic. They trusted that we weren't built on one relationship, but on the strength of many. At home, it softened my presence. Instead of bringing home fear disguised as irritability, I brought home steadiness. My family didn't need to feel the panic of one empty chair. They needed me, present, unshaken, rooted. Inside myself, the shift was profound. I stopped tying my identity to retention rates. I stopped letting one phone call dictate my sense of future. Instead, I carried the mantra, resilience is my true stability. That became the heartbeat of the week, a one-line truth that held me when fear pressed hard. The closing image that stays with me is simple. A desk not defined by absence, but by presence. Not one empty chair, but a stack of client files, small but steady. Proof that even when some leave, many remain. Proof that resilience holds. And as I close this chapter, I sense the next challenge pressing closer. If losing a client sparks panic, financial volatility pushes even harder. The market itself feels like it can turn on a headline. That will be the storm I face next. For tonight, though, I end with a quiet musing. What helps you bounce back when you lose a client or opportunity? I seal the rhythm with 4 lines. Resilience is my true stability. A stack of folders steady on the desk. And tonight, I rest in this proof. My worth isn't defined by who leaves. It's proven by who I continue to serve.